Hey guys, it's Nathan from Arms of Illum, and I'm here today with yet another Darth Vader conversion. You guys are definitely getting used to seeing these from me, but this one's a little bit different, so I'm excited to share it with you today. I just completed this conversion for Yen, so if you're watching, the saber is on its way to you as we speak. So I hope you enjoy getting it. Looking forward to getting it into your hands. But without further ado, let's go over why this one is different from my previous builds. As I mentioned, it is a Hasbro Black Series Force Effects Darth Vader lightsaber. It is a New Hope version, as you can tell by the shorter T-tracks that do not extend all the way to the clamp. The angle of the clamp is different than you would see on an Empire Strikes Back version, and we do not have the exposed wires up here at the emitter windows. So inside of this we have a conversion kit from the Custom Saber Shop. Inside of that is a Tri-Cree deep red white LED with the white for the flash on clash effects. The back of the saber is a custom chassis that I worked on with 7 chambers to design. It is intended for really most of the Master Replicas / Hasbro Force Effects line. It's a very versatile chassis. I'll show it to you in a little bit, but it works great in these Vaders. That's what it's originally designed for, but then I realized that it could be adapted to many of those hilts, including the Graflex style Luke Skywalker, Rey Jedi training models, and so on that are out there. So a very versatile chassis that I'm bringing to all of my future conversions, and then it's also available in my Shapeways shop for those of you who want to use it in your builds. This is the version 1 rendition of it. I have a second version or an updated version out there with some minor tweaks, but overall a superb, highly versatile chassis that I can't wait to share with you here in just a moment. Riding on top of that chassis is a Nano Biscotte V4 from Plecter Labs. It's the newest of the Nano Biscottes. It is a superb board, huge improvement over the V3. I know I've said this in almost every video I've included one of these boards in, but it's just, I cannot stress enough just how good this board is, especially in comparison to that already pretty solid version 3 model that was out prior to this past fall. Aside from that, there's a 28mm bass speaker, a Vico bass speaker from the Custom Saber Shop, and we have a 18650 lithium-ion battery, 2600 milliamp hours, give you a little bit over an hour of runtime again while you're using this saber. Aside from those changes, we've got a new switch setup. This is big. So in the past, I noticed a lot of folks like to use the press down, or they like to bury a momentary switch underneath this bubble strip. I was always resistant to that for a number of reasons. One, it wasn't exactly intuitive to me to find a good place to hide it there. There isn't a whole lot of space in this clamp. Even when you take it apart, you got to kind of be smart about where you put things, just because you've got a cross bolt running right through the middle of it to secure both sides. You've got some places where wires need to run. Not a ton of room, although it's workable. So what I had done in the past was I had actually put my switches on the back of the clamp right here. I would drill a hole into that black plastic right there, and then I would sandwich it between that back face and the original switch holder. It worked really well. Accidental activation of the saber was not impossible, but it was much less likely. Just because that switch was on the back there, it was kind of protected by the fake clamp lever here, and it worked out really well. But I was getting worried that I might actually break a saber when I was doing that. This isn't a very thick piece of plastic by any means, and after drilling it out, I was still having to push that switch down in there and then sandwich it, and I was just worried that one of these days I was going to end up with a broken conversion. And these clamps aren't easy to replace. They aren't readily available, so I changed up the design. I recently acquired a 3D printer, which kind of makes sense. I've talked about the new chassis. So I recently acquired a 3D printer, started printing my own parts. I designed and printed a new switch holder to go inside of this clamp, which allows me to drop a 6mm 6x6x10 that I've shaved down to the correct height, momentary switch underneath that bubble strip, and now just pressing down on the bubble strip will activate the saber. There are some advantages, there are some disadvantages. One, the disadvantage is that it's a little bit easier to accidentally turn this saber on. I may do that here in the video later on. The other thing, but the advantage is that it's totally invisible. You cannot see that switch is in there at all. It's buried underneath the card, the bubble strip, and it looks great. This hilt does not have any obvious external modifications at this point. So I see that as a major improvement, especially if you're going to be using this as a display piece, not to have that hole drilled in the back. Since I mentioned 3D printing, there are really three new parts that are featured in this build that I'll be featuring in all of my future conversions that are worth highlighting. The first was the chassis. The second was that new switch holder, and on the back here, and this is nothing special, but this new black pommel insert, which is made to replicate the overall look of the original MPP flash gun that was used as the Darth Vader hero prop. So as you can see, nothing too special there. It's got a little hole for the sound to escape, but it's still small enough a hole that you're not going to have debris easily getting inside there. The one thing that is worth noting is it does make the saber a little bit quieter, but it also deepens that bass, so there's a little bit of a trade-off, but it replicates the look, and that I see is something that's important. So yeah, those three new features will be on all of my Vader conversions, and probably some of the other like the Luke or the Rey conversions. I'll have versions of these parts that are made to go on those. Like my other Vaders, I have a set screw on the bottom of the hilt to retain that chassis. The chassis is made to fit these hilts like a glove, but the problem is that there's a lot of variance really across the board when it comes to the Force Effects lightsabers. For example, lately I've had to sand like crazy on the conversion kits to get them to fit inside the hilt. This one slid right in. Now, I don't think the custom saber shop has loose tolerances when it comes to those parts. Quite honestly, I just think that the Hasbro's manufacturing standards are probably a little less consistent than I would prefer. I'm glad this one slid right in because it saved me a load of time, but you never know quite what I'm going to get when it comes to these. That kind of extends to the hilt as a whole. Sometimes I'll put a chassis in and it'll fit perfectly, you know, super tight. Sometimes they'll be too tight and you can't get them in or out, and then sometimes they slide too freely. So I went ahead and put that set screw in there to keep everything nice and snug inside the hilt so that you're not going to have banging around getting those false clashes, false swings from a loose chassis. Let's go ahead and open this thing up and I'll show you everything inside. In order to do that, we first need to unscrew the pommel. That set screw right there is an 832 screw, so it'll work with any of your 5/64 hex keys. Those are pretty much the industry standard for blade retention screws, so most of you will probably have that. But that being said, I will include a hex key with each of these conversions so that you aren't left out if you don't have one. Sliding the pommel out, or sliding the chassis out, is very easy. And as you can see, Yen had specially requested a purple chassis, so I couldn't let him down, and we went with the purple chassis from Shapeways. All of my parts, or all of the 3D printed designs that I've got coming out, will be available on Shapeways for those of you who would like to do your own builds using them. I will probably be printing most of mine here at home. This was more of just a test print to make sure that the Shapeways version worked. So Yen kind of is the beneficiary of my newness to this. So this is ordered via Shapeways, and it is indeed purple. At the top you can see the Nano Biscotte. It fits really well inside of that rather large soundboard channel right there. The beauty of this though is this chassis wasn't necessarily designed with just the Nano Biscotte in mind. Yes, those make up most of these conversions, but it was actually designed so that it could fit any commercially available soundboard up to and including the new Warsaber's Cerebrus board, which is a behemoth at around 70 millimeters long. So this platform here is approximately 71 millimeters long. So you can fit just about any commercially available board in there. The only exception would be like a crystal focus with the color extender. You're going to have to find somewhere else to put the color extender because that won't quite fit. But pretty much anything else, all the NEC boards, the Plecter boards, that Warsaber's board, really anything else are going to fit in here just fine. Underneath, you have not only a removable battery, but a recharge port. There are a couple reasons why, really there's one major reason why I included this, but an auxiliary reason beyond that. The first reason that I included the removable battery and the recharge port is because I wanted this chassis to be appropriate for NeoPixel conversions. I haven't done any of those to date, although I have had a lot of folks who are interested in them, and frankly any personal sabers I do from here on out will be NeoPixel builds. That being said, I wanted this chassis to work with those, and work with those, really any fixed battery option works just fine as long as you're using a battery that can support the high drain, or the high current that is required by the NeoPixels. The only issue is that you run through those batteries rather quickly, because at minimum you're probably looking at 4 amps, and that's just for a single color, maybe not even full brightness, and it really depends on the length of your blade and how many LEDs you have in there. So at minimum of 4 amps, some people are pulling as many as 10 amps on those builds, or even a bit more. Really depends on how bright you want to run them, how much color mixing you want, but regardless, you run through batteries very quickly. If somebody is at a convention, they're trooping, they want to be able to run that saber for a few hours. The only way that they're going to realistically be able to do that is by being able to swap the batteries. So this has, long story short, this has a removable battery option. The other reason I wanted to include a removable battery is it just makes servicing easier. Things go bad, parts go bad, you know, batteries are probably the most likely part to fail in this saber. So if something were to happen to this cell, and it is a quality, these ODEC cells, they're rewraps, I believe, of LGs. They're perfectly fine cells, but I've had ones that are better than others. If one fails, it's very easy just to swap it out of the holder and pop a new one in. That being said, especially for this build, because it is not a NeoPixel build, I will be including a charger, but it will be for the recharge port. I strongly prefer that buyers use the recharge port instead of removing and reinstalling the battery over and over, because I have seen firsthand that since these battery holders are so tight, you're either going to damage your battery at some point or you're going to damage the holder. If you're super careful, maybe you can prove me wrong. I just don't love the fact that they are so tight and it puts so much strain on the parts to remove those batteries. So if you've got a standard LED conversion like Yen does here, you're going to be getting that charger. In fact, most of you are probably going to get that charger even if you have a NeoPixel. I'm going to leave the option for the removable battery, but there you have it. So other than that, nothing too noteworthy. This chassis is compatible with MHS discs, so it can actually be adapted to fit the MPP 2.0 from Corbanth as well, although this would not be the version of this chassis that I would recommend for that. I've got a specialized version, or the updated version 2 will also support that once I finish it up. So let's go ahead and slide this back in. It should slide in relatively easily. If it doesn't, just give it a little bit of a twist. And then once you've given yourself a little bit of clearance there at the end of the hilt, turn the guy over, if I can find the set screw I installed, and tighten everything down. You don't have to tighten it too far. Definitely don't like snug that thing down ridiculously. You'll crack the chassis. Once you start to feel that resistance, and once you realize that it's not going to fall out on its own, you're good to go. Let's go ahead and put that pommel back on, and we can go through the sound fonts. Now on this, the first sound bank that we'll see or hear is Vader R1 or Vader 1 by Lord Blako. It is his Rogue One inspired font. Superb, probably my favorite overall sound font, and it's almost certainly a favorite among my customers. Everybody's asking for that Rogue One font, and once you hear it, you can totally understand why. It really does replicate the sound of his saber in the final moments of that film. In the second bank is the standard gray meat sound font. I really like the gray meat font. Prior to the version 4 of the Nano Biscotte, the version 3 and before and prior only had 2 sound banks, and we did not get that gray meat. We got light meat and dark meat. Gray meat is the best of the 3, so to have that is awesome now. And then, well, before we get to the third bank, I should also mention that gray meat's boot sound has been changed on this saber. As much as I like the font, I hate the boot. It just does not sound like it's kind of a roar, and it doesn't really fit in universe for me. And then that last sound bank is dark meat, another standard or base font, and it's perfectly fine for a Sith saber. Nothing too special, but you'll hear it and you can judge for yourself. I'm going to go ahead and install this Ultra Saber's mid-grade blade. This is the one I will include with the conversion. It's a 36-inch mid-grade blade from Ultra Sabers, and it fits extremely tightly into this blade holder. So, again, when you're trying to install it, just give it a slight twist as you're putting it in there, and you'll feel it hit the bottom. Boom. It is extremely snug. You don't even really need a retention screw with this, but obviously because it's part of the conversion kit, we're going to tighten down the knurled screw to retain our blade. That thing's going nowhere now. So let's go ahead and hit our switch. That wakes the saber from deep sleep, and that is the Vader 1 boot sound. It's just a superb font, guys. A very stable hum. I've just got a little bit of flicker in the blade, but otherwise it's a mostly stable looking blade. You've got 16 swings and 16 clashes with this. Like I tend to do with any of my builds, I shorten up that flash on clash effect to make it more dramatic, and I pull out some of the red instead of just pumping the white on top of the red. I pull out some of that for a more dramatic white flash on clash. End result is something that's just fantastic. I love it. It's a very quick white flash, and then back to that blade color. Let's go ahead and get a few swings in. You can hear that flutter in the swings, which is very, very characteristic of the Darth Vader lightsaber in the films. Hold that down. In between each font we have the mute on the go setting. That's that first beep. Here you have a silent saber that still has the same visual effects of the font that precedes that. So in this case these are the same effects as the Vader 1. Hold that down and turn it off. Now we're going to hold it past that first beep. And now there's a subtle difference here between this boot sound and that previous one. You may not notice it if you're not listening for it, but this one is probably double the length. Whereas that first one for the Vader 1 boot was a quick breathing sound. This one's much slower. This is gray meat. It still has some of those Vader style characteristics, especially in that hum. And therefore I left the visual effects on this one, or at least the flicker, fairly similar to that first one. The clashes are a little bit more dramatic from a sound standpoint, but I did not remove as much of the red this time from the overall look. So you're pumping more, it's more of a pink flash on clash versus that pure white in the previous font. So there you go. Finally, we'll check out Dark Meat. That's the standard Dark Meat boot. Nothing wrong with that one. And this one's deeper than the others. Definitely does not sound quite as much like the Vader lightsaber from the films, but it's a nice, different sound. We obviously don't want all of the fonts to sound the same. Don't want all the visual effects to be the same. So this one's probably got a little bit more flicker and there's a little bit longer flash on clash. Those clashes are very electric sounding on this one, but overall really solid. And there you have it. Go ahead and turn it off. Well, that pretty well covers it. Yeah, and I hope you enjoy this. You should have it here in the next few days. I'm shipping it out this week. If you guys have any questions about this saber, go ahead and post those in the comments or send me an email. I have no problem answering any kind of questions you guys have. If you're interested in a Vader conversion like this one, you can head on over to my website. It'll be linked in the description. I am limited on the number of commissions I can take on. I have just recently introduced on the right sidebar of the site a list of current commissions and where folks stand in that queue. Currently, I'm only able to accept 5 commissions at a time. The reason for that is really one, I still want to enjoy this. I certainly don't want this to become a full-time job or anything like that. The other thing is I don't want you guys waiting on your sabers for months and months and months. So the only way I can guarantee that is by limiting the number of commissions I can take. Right now I do have some openings, but they're quickly filling up. So like I said, if you have any questions, be sure to either post them in the comments or better yet, just head on over to that page and we can chat there. If you liked what you saw today, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and I'm looking forward to bringing you guys some more content here. Like I said, I've got some new 3D printed designs that are coming out. I'll probably have a kind of a commercial for those here, an infomercial, so to speak, here in the next few days, maybe a couple weeks, just showing off the new options and introducing you guys to the Shapeways store. That will also be linked in the description though for any of you who are interested. Alright guys, thanks for watching and may the Force be with you.